Welcome to The Array, the podcast dedicated to delivering AI clarity for the marketing community, presented by Jacquard. Every week, we'll discuss the latest developments in AI and MarTech with an informed and inspiring guest and unpack what it means for today's enterprise marketers. From new challenges we're discovering in real time to the opportunities that could be saving you precious time on the way to driving long-term growth and love for your brand. My name is Toby Colthar, the Chief Product Officer of Jacquard, the AI brand messaging leader, and with me always, the hot dog to my Yule log, the crazy train to my Fraser crane, I don't know who that is, and the Atari to my Ferrari. It's Jasper Pye, Chief Technology Officer of Jacquard. How are you, Jasper?
I'm good, especially after that intro. Also,
is Fraser crane? Is that Fraser from the show?
You know what? I have no idea, but I'm assuming it is. So
from Peter, yeah, he's given us a thumbs up. Okay, good. I'm glad I got that one right, other than Mr. Peanut, which I didn't get last time.
I mean, Atari to a Ferrari is pretty damn cool.
So before we get into our guest, just wanted to ask, so it was actually our birthday last weekend. And for our listeners, Jasper and I actually have the same birthday, despite being at least a decade apart in age. What did you? I'm
the younger one, obviously.
Quite clearly. What did you get up to?
So I woke up sick on my birthday, and I thought I'd finally got COVID, but it turns out I didn't. So I'm still immune from COVID. So I know you'll be pleased to know that.
Well, the one thing I hate about Jasper is that he keeps telling me he's immune from COVID. And I thought I was too until I told people I was immune, and that made me get it. And you keep telling people that you're immune and you're still not getting it, which is incredibly...
The test is the test.
I saw on your Instagram that you went for oysters and martinis. You didn't
know that, it was a forced oyster and martini, and then it was straight home to bed.
Very good. I remember I was telling you and your wife about my plans for my birthday, and so I went to the Renaissance Fair in upstate New York, which is amazing because it's a collection of how Americans stereotype the British. You know, it's just walking around
ye olde England.
Ye old England, thinking that we all drink mead and people giving me bad British accents back to me. And I remember telling, I think you and your wife, that this was the plan. And I've never seen two people so baffled why someone would want to go do that for their birthday. And so that's probably the clear difference between us. But
yeah, we definitely have different preferences when it comes to birthdays. I'm like, Michelin-starred meal, please. Oysters and martinis.
And I'm like dressed as a Venetian merchant in the mud.
Having tomatoes thrown at you.
Exactly. Before we get in, we did have a discussion the other day about Zuckerberg's new fashion sense. And I just wanted you had some interesting takes on that. So yeah, tell me your thoughts on Zuckerberg's new direction and style.
I mean, I've got to be honest. When he released, so what's the new headset? He did that release of the new headset. What's it called again?
Project something, but yeah, the AR glasses.
Yeah, and I just remember thinking, because like the whole of social media is blowing up at the moment with how good his makeover's been from that, like, you know, when he was in front of like the US government and he literally looked like a humanoid robot, and everyone's been going on about how good the glow up is, but he rocked up to that. Like, clearly they're spending a lot of money on his branding team, his personal branding team, but he rocked up to that event and he had his name written on his t-shirt, and I was like, all of that effort is just brought tumbling down in one fell swoop. He literally had Zuck on his t-shirt. So
no, I actually looked into this, and it's actually funnier than that. It was Latin, and it was said Zuck out nihil, which is a Caesarian quote, right?
Oh, wow.
Which is from out Caesar out nihil, which means well, the original one was if either Caesar or nothing. But it said either Zuck or nothing, right? Which is this like Roman imperialist quote, right? Which is kind of wild if you think about it. And it was making me think that in the eventual AI apocalypse, right, out of all of this, if only there were signs that things were going off track a bit. And one of the most powerful men in AI was spouting Roman imperialist quotes.
Yeah.
And that ultimately that maybe there was a sign that we might be on the wrong track when he's literally saying, if not Zuckerberg, then nothing, which is a bit wild. But I also think it's funny. The more AI becomes human, the more Zuckerberg becomes human, which kind of tells me that there's something there that maybe Zuckerberg hasn't been able to pass.
The models get better and Zuckerberg gets more natural.
Yeah, there's maybe he actually can pass the Turing test at this point, and that maybe the majority of people would have guessed him as a robot before this point, and now he might actually be a human because the models are getting better.
Totally. Now I've got a question for you, because we've got a great guest today, but he's also our boss. Are you going to introduce him as your Yule log? Because I feel like it's only fair if you treat us both the same.
No, I actually I have some kind of semblance of self-preservation, so I'm actually going to leave that one out. So our guest today is the CEO of Jacquard, Dan Head. Dan has a decade worth of experience leading high growth teams in a range of technology sectors, industries, and geographies. And before joining Jacquard, he helped the customer engagement lead at Braze navigate the journey from Series B startup to IPO. He's a thought leader in AI and MarTech and the ways data, technology, and creativity can best serve a winning brand strategy. And as Jasper mentioned, he's also our boss. Welcome, Dan. It's a pleasure to have you on the Array. Before we get started, do you want to just give a bit of an introduction to who you are and your experience over your career, and then give us kind of a view on how the MarTech landscape has changed over the last 10 years or so?
Yeah. Hi, Toby. Hi, Jasper. It's good to see the company sweating its assets today, live. I've been in technology for a while. I started off in ERP in 96. So that's enterprise resource planning. That's sort of managing inventory and balancing supply demand in factories. I spent some time in some other 3-letter acronyms: workforce management, WFM, SCM, supply chain management. And I kind of floated around that for a bit. And it took me to CRM, another acronym for customer relationship management, in sort of the early 2010s. And then that morphed into social. So that was the first really big change for me, in that social media had suddenly hit the commercial mainstream and all brands were looking to find out how they could monetize that. I think brands were most interested to see what the general population thought of them, actually. That was probably where social media really started for enterprises. And also that's where I joined it, which was social media listening. A company called Radian 6 got acquired by Salesforce, which was a social listening platform. And then they acquired a social publishing platform called Buddy Media. And then the year after that, an email platform called ExactTarget. And that's when the next wave of my sort of journey, where the kind of origins of that were, in that Salesforce smashed these different softwares together and called it the Marketing Cloud. And that's a term now that other businesses, Adobe and so on, have also taken on board for their customer experience products, if you like. And I went from there to this company, Braze, which was really there to address another wave of technology. So we'd had social, and the next one was mobile. And all of a sudden, people weren't necessarily engaging with brands on email. It was desktop web, it was mobile web, it was mobile app, it was SMS, it was WhatsApp and other messenger services. And brands suddenly couldn't figure out how to keep up with it. And that journey sort of started off with tech disruptors, dating apps and delivery apps and Lime scooters and that kind of thing. And then the big enterprises like Disney, like McDonald's, realized that people were interacting with their brands on apps. So they thought, we need to be mobile first. And then people that work for the disruptors went to go and work for those enterprises. The way that these brands that we all experienced as consumers really explodes. That's when we're receiving messages on more channels. We're getting more accurate recommendations, or hopefully more accurate recommendations. We are giving up so much more information about ourselves, and GDPR and regulations are making that essential for brands to do. And then this next wave, of course, so social first, then mobile, and then AI. And so AI for me feels like my career going all the way back to the start. I started off with machinery and machine calibration and inputs and outputs, and that's exactly what this is, but to serve marketers and the needs that they have for keeping up with the demands of this modern multi-channel landscape. So here I am in my 50s now, and it feels like my sort of career is going all the way back to the start, and it's like a new industrial revolution again.
It's pretty exciting. It's also a little bit of a chaos ball to how we all work. Do you think brands are ready for it? Do you think they want to be ready for it? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
There's a quote you guys have probably heard me use before, which is one of my favorite sort of marketing thought leader quotes, which is from Keith Weed, who used to be the CMO of Unilever. And he once said, our job as marketers is to get to the future first and welcome our customers as they arrive. I think that's right. I think marketers probably believe that. I think many brands are nowhere near achieving that.
Yeah.
And we all know as consumers who they are. So when we get 10 minutes into a show and we on Netflix or whatever, and we turn it off and it recommends another one based on our preferences in the past, we know they're using our data. We know there's some degree of engagement, technology or thought put into that. Burger King did one a while back where you could unlock a Whopper coupon for 1 cent if you got within 600 yards of McDonald's. That was very cool. But many brands still operate like it's 2002. They're going to send you the weekly, monthly offers email. You'll get one for products that you're not interested in, you're never going to buy, that aren't appropriate to your profile at all. You may have given that brand tons of data and they're not going to use it at all. And we've seen retail in particular really get squeezed recently. Many retailers are no longer in existence. And this is creeping up on these brands. I mean, technological development, it's not going to stop and wait for anyone.
You talked about like customer data and people sharing information. Do you think customers want to share data with brands? Do they to get that kind of effect of like smart campaigns? People
quite rightly give marketing a bad name because a lot of marketing isn't great. But we all know marketing that is great. There was, I mentioned Burger King, the former CMO of Burger King, Fernando Machado, who led their brand team when they did that Whopper Detour campaign I mentioned. I saw him stand up at an event once and he said something like, great marketing creativity defies gravity. And that kind of is right. There was that, this is another Cannes Lions thing. There was that Coinbase ad at the Super Bowl where, you're paying how many millions of bucks for a 30-second slot. This was a couple of years ago, 22, I think. And there was just that QR code bouncing off the walls like the old computer game. And it was just silent. Like it was a pink screen with a QR code. And it made everybody, millions of people, get off their sofas, get their phones out and follow this thing around on the screen. And then it just linked to a Coinbase page. You could say that was clickbait. It was clickbait. But everyone was like, okay, that was really clever. The technology is there now to be part of that creative canvas and to take great ideas into production at scale. AI can obviously do that far more than large teams of people.
I was going to say, it's interesting how, the use of data, I always see it as, it depends you kind of describe it as creativity. And I think there's angles to that around relevance as well, where you can use customer data and be very non-relevant and it's annoying. If I walk past the store and it says, we've got a pair of jeans for sale, please buy it. You're kind of like, I don't like the fact that you knew that I just walked past the store. But if I received a text that says your appointment with Dr. blah, blah, blah for your, hideous disease is in 30 minutes and you're 15 minutes away from the doctor's office based on your location, that's actually like, that's useful to me. But it's using 10 times as much information about me. It's using my health information, my location information, who my doctor is. But I'm like, that's actually very useful. I can now, I need to leave in 15 minutes and go there. And so I don't think people mind using the data if it's to Dan's point, a really creative ad. And it's like, wow, that's cool. Like the Whopper Detour using location. People didn't mind that knew that they were buying McDonald's because it meant that it was relevant and it was enjoyable. But if you're using it badly and you're using it in the wrong way, then suddenly people are like, I don't like the fact that you've done that. And so to your point, it's about the creativity of the campaign and the effectiveness of campaign. And that it gives you a lot more latitude in what people are willing to give you if they're feeling like they're getting something in return.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the difference between traditional marketing and life cycle marketing, really. So life cycle marketing to me is using all the available touch points to understand the customer, the potential customer, and nurture them through the relationship with the brand from the very first touch point to the end in every little detail. So for example, back to that example that we're talking about, you download an app and we've all seen it. One of the first things it says is, do you opt into push? Do you opt into location tracking? And you're going to go, no. And Apple and Google are going to make that easier so that you don't have to say no. It's just going to default to no. And brands need to understand that they need to earn the right to have that relationship with somebody, to interrupt them with a push notification, to communicate with them when the location is appropriate to a service or a value-added service that they can provide. They have to earn the right to that. So why aren't they using different messaging types to explain why opting into push or why opting into location tracking would be a good idea? These channels are there. The technology can do that from a trigger perspective. You can even do it with some cool creativity to make it exciting. Do you want to opt into location tracking to get a Whopper for 1 cent from your nearest McDonald's? You'd be like, what? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So going back to that AI piece, how can marketers discern between the AI tools of today that kind of they kind of all promise what you were just describing, creativity, they all promise productivity, efficiency. How can marketers discern between the ones that can truly do that and the ones that can't? I feel like it's an age-old problem. Marketing products have always said that they can solve all the problems in marketing. But how can marketers today discern between the AI ones that can say they can do it and the ones that can't?
Yeah. I mean, software has always been a fashion industry. It jumps on trends and then it all too often has inflated itself. Over the years, the analysts put these different technologies into quadrants or waves or whatever they call it. And these don't really exist in AI right now. You can't really tell the difference between the generalists and the industry specifists. You can't tell the difference between tools to facilitate creativity and tools to facilitate production. It's just a great big blob of product marketing from all the vendors. A lot of what buyers or evaluators of AI tech will see right now are claims all about the same thing. That's not true. These vendors aren't everything to everybody. But what's also true is that there are so many brilliant technologies now that can perform a valuable function at different points in that supply chain. So some AI tech is really good at facilitating creativity. Some of it's really good at facilitating production. And these tools will have a role to play at different points in that process. So that's a kind of rather vague answer, I think deliberately, Toby, because I think the industry is in the process of putting these into their relevant categories. But my experience in software is that one way of sort of fast tracking that from a buyer of technology's perspective is to look at the provenance of technology, where technology is coming from, what it was always originally designed to do, tends to be a very strong orbit for what that business always ends up being. An example from my recent past will be, which was a message delivery company sending emails, sending push, sending SMS and orchestrating the whole lot. It was designed to have channel agnostic message orchestration delivery capability. It was built to do that. Other companies claimed to do that, but they came from just being email. Other companies came to that from just being analytics. Other companies came to that from just being app testing platforms. But they all ended up being multi-channel message delivery platforms. But where they were coming from always limited where they were going to. That hasn't changed in my history. And if buyers run diligent workshops, they can tell the difference.
It's hard to get the seamless experience that the product marketing kind of claims off the back of the mergers of these techs. One of the things that kind of comes off of that is the the language that we produce and how we communicate. So you talked a lot about like this ability to be kind of channel agnostic and the ability to get to people where we need to get to them, and to be smart about how we talk to them at that point in time. How does language kind of play into that? How important is language in that process about how we communicate with our end users?
We know that sophisticated, clever language can inspire, it can intimidate, it can separate out your willingness to engage and accept that communication. What we're really talking about here is, and I'm just going to orient myself around that Whopper, Burger King example because it's in my head. If the campaign is to offer a Whopper for 1 cent if you get within 600 yards of McDonald's, there are lots of different ways of saying that. Mm-hmm. And if you need to say that in multiple languages, which you should, because the very least you can do for a respectful communication is to acknowledge the language the recipient would like to speak. It's a really complex task. What's the best way of saying it in the language that's most appropriate for you? So all brands are trying to figure out what is the best way of saying everything in the tone, in the language, in the most culturally appropriate, relevant way for you. Okay, so do that across all the campaigns, all the channels, all the time. Oh, and by the way, it's all got to work really well. Like that is a huge scale problem. And I think if brands haven't figured out that that's a really big problem, it's because they haven't figured out that that's the competitive landscape they have to be competing on.
You always use a really good example about taking on your phone's first language or default language and using that as a way of communicating with people rather than just communicating with them based on the language of the country that they live in, for example, because we're such a multicultural society now that, everyone communicates in different ways, and we should be creative about how we think about that.
There's so much nuance, and it's so easy to get it wrong, and it's so hard to get it right, that I think brands need to have a very clear understanding of the problem, but also how to solve it.
Yeah, and I think if we go back to the problem then, so now you've got every brand on earth trying to get to everybody on earth through every channel that's available. And there are always new channels. Like I didn't know until a couple of years ago that Twitch was this huge gaming platform owned by Amazon. And when you see it, you just can't believe there's this whole world of people who live their lives on Twitch. And if you want to promote a Friday 10% off pizza deal to people on Twitch, you can't send them an email. They're not going to pick that up. And we've all heard that attention economy expression. So when we receive a message, why are we going to open it? Well, the brand, first of all, because if we didn't give the brand permission to meet us on that channel, for starters, we wouldn't have installed the app. We wouldn't have been to the website. We wouldn't have opted into email. So if it's interrupted and undesired, it's like receiving a message from somebody you don't know. You're not going to open it. So the brand is the first thing. Channel and timing is important. It's an important prerequisite, because if you deliver a package to a house where somebody doesn't live, or at a time when they're not going to be there, well then what was the point? So brand, channel and timing is a prerequisite. And then it's, what have you got to say? And you can spend a lot of time working on the content inside a message. So inside an email, or the image inside a push notification. But if you don't click on them, you're not actually going to see it. So the first thing is, how do I even invite somebody into that message over all the other messages that they're going to receive? So that's a critical touch point for the brand. And to do that on the individual's terms in their language, saying whatever you want to say in the best possible way, that is a complex task. Like you said, creative input and then production at scale with all the relative considerations. So this is really complicated, but the good news is that there is so much good technology out there now that can do all these things. And I think this shift from sort of 2002 post.com e-commerce, well, email marketing to modern marketing is actually more of a mindset shift than a technology shift. People think it's difficult because too many software vendors have been claiming things they can't do. But actually now there is technology that is fit for purpose. And with the right tools for the job, it's amazing what progress you can make.
Yeah. One thing I've always thought is there is a risk here that we throw a bunch of engineers and data scientists at the problem. We think we're gonna write some prompts, and all of a sudden all of our automation woes have gone away. Do you think that's accurate? Do you think we can just write some prompts and all of a sudden we've got a system that can automate it? Like what's your take on that?
Over the last few years, social, mobile, now AI, all companies to some extent have become technology companies because they build and maintain websites and apps. They have complex data infrastructure that holds all the data of their customers. That requires management and development and evolution. So they've all become tech companies. Most businesses now can build tech. So the question is, do you build tech or do you buy tech? And so here's AI, this lovely new box of tricks, all these new raw materials. What should we do with it? And everybody has jumped on it. So you've got brand engineering teams trying to figure out what they can build with AI, agencies becoming software companies, less than 2 years after, well, it is 2 years now since ChatGPT was launched into the mainstream, have got game-changing software applications, which don't usually take only 2 years to create. And so do you build it? Do you buy it? What do you build? What do you buy? You can get it from everybody. Everyone's got an opinion. I think that there's a lot of time and resources being spent on this that are not necessarily well spent. But the flip side of that is something I read in a Microsoft article recently, which was that even in the face of AI inevitability, leaders are inert. And that's also a problem. Just kind of rabbit in the headlights is no good either. So I think the brands that I saw make the most of social first, make the most of mobile first, they tend to dive in really quickly, play with it, understand this new monster. How do we deal with it? And then pretty quickly figure out, is that something we run with ourselves or is that something that we look outside for? So the key is to take action. The key is to learn and to realize that if you're not doing it, somebody else is.
Yeah. I still feel like a lot of the demos you see online, they're just a little bit underwhelming. It's like you've got this huge asset and the output is just a few variations of a message. And it's kind of like, you've got to be thinking, we've got to start thinking about it bigger than that, right? Like we talked about all of these new channels, all of these new touch points, all of these new languages that we need to be thinking about communicating to our customers on. And if all we can get from a model is just a few variations of a message, it's kind of like, feel like we've missed the trick a little bit.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of points to make on that. One, I'm going to put back on the two of you because you're really well positioned to address that. So the first thing is stating the obvious, but it needs to be said. These new large language models are unimaginably powerful. I think most people have a taste of that now. But like I did something recently, I loaded in a 63 slide board deck into ChatGPT and said, tell me what questions I think the board will ask me. What have I missed?
That's why you were so prepared.
I was like a machine that meeting. It digested the deck and gave me the critique seconds. 63 slide deck.
That's really powerful.
And even that is nothing compared to what these models can do. So the point about them is that if we are judging the value of AI by our human ability to inform it and our human ability to digest its outputs, then we are completely missing the point. Back to my early days in factories, you look at modern car factories, there aren't any humans welding cars, but automation, industrial revolutions of automation have never been about making craftspeople look bad. They've always been about amplifying human ingenuity and creativity and ability, amplifying it. So that's the first thing. It's important to think about the power of AI in a different way. This is not just a human productivity assistant. The second part, I think, is on the two of you, actually, or rather on professionals in your field of technology, which is AI is a very big label. So what is it? There's large language models, optimization algorithms, machine learning. Is that AI? When companies say we are an AI company or we're doing AI, what does that mean? I suppose so. The question back to the two of you is, how do you think that buyers can get a better understanding of what AI is and isn't? What is legitimate technology in terms of accessing greater scale and automation versus something that is really repackaging of something that's been around for a long time?
And I think it's certainly true that you see a lot of these vendors out there that see AI as, how much can we replace a human's workflow? How much can a marketer, as a marketer, how much can I give to AI? I can get it to write my subject lines as a copywriter. I can get it to do something that otherwise I would have done, and it makes my life easier. I think that's a slippery slope. I also think it's entirely missing the point, because to your point with the car analogy and the factory analogy, really it should be used to multiply and amplify human creativity. And so when I look at the vendors these days, who only focus on LLMs, it's very much a very myopic and quite limited view of what it can do, rather than actually what's possible, where it's instead of like, why not get it to do things that humans could never do, rather than replacing what humans can do. And I think that is where the value ultimately lives, and is where ultimately there's no end to that value.
I 100% agree with Toby in the sense that we as technologists should be thinking about ways to do things that humans can't do themselves. So I really love the use case of, like, you know, we're on a podcast, so I'm fully expecting this to be turned into my voice, but like in Italian for the Italian market. Like, that's a really cool use case for AI. And that's doing, like, my wife's Italian, so I should really be able to redo this podcast in Italian, but I can't. So being able to use technology to do something that I clearly can't do myself. And by the way, if my wife watches this, the lessons are coming on well, so we're getting there. But that's a great example of using the technology to solve a problem that I can't solve myself. So yeah, I think we're very much aligned in the way we kind of think about things, and the way we think about this being about automating at scale.
Yeah. That drew me into my manufacturing background a bit, which is, how do brands get value from these technologies? So I think there are three factors. One is, how do you access the world of AI? There are lots of different large language models. Do you use an open source one, build yourself? Do you use Anthropic, Claude, whatever? How do I access this world of AI to get value from it? The second thing is, how do I learn to trust it? Because I definitely don't trust it. Why would I trust it? And then how do I scale it into my operation, which is mature, and I don't want it to disrupt it? Because I have revenue coming from all these touch points, and AI needs to facilitate and grow that. It can't disrupt it and damage that. So it's really important that we focus on two fundamental prerequisites, but understand that they are a means to an end, not the end. And one is compliance and one is performance. This happens with machines. When a machine is making parts on a factory floor, is it producing them within tolerances to sufficient controls, to sufficient quality at an acceptable speed? This is the same with the output of an AI. Is it producing an output that is within brand guide rails? And how? How is it within brand guide rails? If, back to the point about it's no good if it's limited by human capacity, checking as to whether or not the output is within brand guide rails, it cannot be limited by human capacity, because then we're missing the point of this hugely powerful machine. So if an output from an AI is 10 things, 50 things, we can review every single one and say if we like it or not. But if it's 1,000 or 50,000, we can't. So the objective is not just, is the output brand compliant, but how do we ensure brand compliance at massive scale? Brands should be asking technologists, for how are you solving for that? the second part is then performance. And I think you said it, Toby, without being too myopic. Of course, this has to perform. We said we're talking about mature operations. We're talking about revenue lines. These have to continue or get better. In fact, they should get better. So how is performance not just going to increase, but then how is it going to be sustained at a higher level without becoming the annoying clickbait like Toby was mentioning? And maybe a brand does want to get clickbaity because all they care about is the open, but that's probably going to come at the price of brand affinity over time. And people have less and less patience for that. So what we're talking about is a theoretical kind of maximum performance level that we can sustain without becoming clickbaity, but with higher performance than we currently get from humans, because after all, this is a machine. Mm-hmm. Now, the good news about those two things is that controls and processes can exist to bring the machine into compliance. And the good thing about performance is that true AI works like a casino. It's going to run so many games, so many permutations, that it's statistically inevitable that it's going to be better than humans. And with the right controls, it can sustain that at the right level, make sure we don't get repetition and fatigue, sustain it over time. So compliance and performance are really important things to drill into, but they are a means to an end, because the end is creativity. So what more are you going to do? There's all these other channels, all these other audiences that would love to engage with your brand, but you're not even trying. You're not testing ways to get people to opt into location tracking because you've got a great new idea. You're not doing that because you don't have the time, because they're not using AI. And that's the thing about automation, the way automation's always been, which is it's like a flywheel. You need to start automating to get efficiencies, which results in more demand, which necessitates automation. You have to dive in and have a go.
That's a good segue into our kind of fun part of the episode, where we're going to go and discern truth from a hallucination, where we're actually going to discern between headlines that have made the news over the last few years and headlines which have entirely been made up. So I'm going to give you guys a true headline and a false headline, and you guys can debate whether which one is which one's accurate. So the first one: AI can now predict your next vacation based on your Instagram feed, and it's always Bali. AI learns to speak whale, but only uses it to complain about internet speeds.
That sounds...
Is there a world where these are both false? Not AI? Like not real, sorry?
No.
No. One of them.
That's a good... Maybe I'll do that on the next one. Or maybe I won't.
One of them's always real.
One of them's always real.
The scary thing from my point of view on that first point is I feel like that was actually loaded with my data and it's actually right, and it actually is Bali. But that's kind of disappointing for me, which is why I think it might be true. But the second one feels like the sort of crazy use case that an AI would come up with. Everything is language, and that's a problem that I have to solve. So I'm going to go for number 2 is true.
Jasper?
I mean, Instagram has got very good at knowing where I'm traveling to recently, but it's not always Bali. And I think it's basically just the TikTok algorithm, right? As soon as you engage with one thing, you just keep seeing this. Like we went to Mallorca recently, and all of a sudden my Instagram was just all Mallorca. But I think that just comes down to engagement. So I don't know if that's necessarily well, it's prediction. Remind me the second one. Remind me what the second one was again.
AI learns to speak whale, but only uses it to complain about internet speeds.
Yeah, that is crazy. Yeah, I'm going to go with that one as well.
Being the true one. So that one is false, although there's actually a bit of truth in that, because I did read in the FT that they are training models on whale sounds and putting it in an embedding space and then mapping that to English so that they can actually work out what whales are saying. And they did some horrific thing where they they worked out what a whale's name was. Apparently whales have names. And they said the whale's name back to the whale, and it like fully freaked out
and responded.
Which is kind of, it was like didn't know how to respond because the thing was saying its name, this big boat, which is kind of horrific in itself. And it was actually a really interesting article that talked about who has the right to speak to whales, like who's our human kind of representative that is allowed to be able to communicate to whales.
It's obviously Attenborough, as long as Attenborough is still with us.
I think I know how to speak to my cat. That's the difference.
I think Attenborough would say, like, why, like, let's just not speak to them. Why don't we just like leave it out?
Leave the poor guys alone.
The next one is AI replaces wedding officiant and offers personalized vows on the blockchain. And the other one is AI rewrites Shakespeare in modern English and calls Hamlet a total vibe.
I mean, I can believe both of those. Those both seem true. I'm going to go with the second one.
Yeah, I can totally believe both. But I kind of like the sort of geeky angle of the first one and putting ownership in the hands of the people on the blockchain. So, all right, I'll go with the first one.
Okay, so that was false. The truth is that AI rewrites Shakespeare in modern English.
Hamlet is a total vibe.
Total vibe. Yeah, it's not wrong. And let's do a final one. Let's see. AI invents a new sport combining chess and parkour, but no one can figure out the rules. I said that almost like in a BBC headline voice. Maybe I should do that. AI invents new sport combining chess and parkour, but no one can figure out the rules. So that's the first one.
Yeah,
and the second one is AI predicts future trends in fashion, designs the world's ugliest sweater, but it sells out anyway.
That one.
Totally.
Definitely that one.
And puts Balenciaga out of business.
Yeah.
That one was the true one.
It's a bin bag and it costs 1,500 quid.
Derelict. I actually, though, think that after this, I'm going to ask ChatGPT to invent a new sport combining chess and parkour, and I'm sure I won't be able to figure out the rules. So that's probably.
I can kind of picture that though. You know, like those giant chess boards where the chess pieces are like as big as humans, and you've got to like. There's something there.
I think you should stick to what you do best.
Well, thanks, Dan. I really appreciated that. I thought that was a great conversation. Hopefully I'll see you in the office tomorrow and we still have our jobs.
Don't give up the day job, Jasper.
What, the day job of the podcast or the day job of... I'm not sure what you mean by that. But I'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully you all enjoyed that. Join us again in the next episode of The Array, which is going to bring us to the end of season 1. We'll be discussing what to look for when marketers begin exploring the AI solutions on offer with our special guest, Lucy Colback, tech writer for the Financial Times. Please remember to like and subscribe The Array wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. I'd also like to give additional thanks to our production partners at Itch Media and the team at Jacquard, our CMO, Marissa Adlet, our creative director, Alejandro Santandrea, our senior designer, David Nolan, brand strategist, Mariana and Chibia Engel, production coordinators, Erin Hernandez and Verity Jennings, and finally, our writer-producer, Peter Berg. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.